It is no secret that our everyday lives are riddled with science, as tremendous feats have been made in lengthening the lifespan. We interact with biomedical health discoveries daily, from the vitamins ingested in the morning, food choices at each meal, understanding the pain we feel in our body and the medication taken to fight those slight pains, but overall, the general well-being we feel when all of these health factors work well. At this moment in history, we cannot ignore the role vaccines play in this overall health we feel as a society. Today, I've been tasked to interrogate the interaction of society and science, and I will focus particularly on health science regarding vaccines. According to the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, vaccines take advantage of your body's natural ability to combat many disease-causing germs or microbes that attack it. Basically, when your body encounters one of these microbes, the immune system remembers how to attack it to protect you later when you encounter those microbes again. Vaccines are killed or weakened parts of the microbes so that they don't actually cause the disease, but this harmless version teaches your immune system how to fight the disease quickly so that they learn how to defeat it later. Since the discovery and popularization of vaccines, diseases, especially those such as measles and pertussis, which affect young children, have decreased in annual cases by 99.9% and 91% respectively in 2009. Part of this dramatic decrease in the presence of cases is due to the herd or community immunity created by vaccines. If vaccinated members of a community do not have a contagious disease because of their immunity granted by the vaccine, then they cannot pass it to those who are not protected or cannot be protected. So, if too many people in a group are not vaccinated, a disease may reappear. The ideal herd immunity is when 95% of a population is vaccinated. Recently, herd immunity has been compromised in certain communities as measles outbreaks are occurring throughout the United States. However, later I'll go more into those communities of people against vaccinations and how it affects society as a whole. The history of immunization practice dates back centuries. For example, there is evidence that Buddhist monks in China drank snake venom to be immune to a snake bite. However, Edward Jenner is the founder of Western vaccinology, when in 1796 he realized milkmaids who worked with cows with cowpox did not contract smallpox. So he vaccinated a little boy by taking material from a cowpox blister and inoculating it into his arm. Later, the boy proved immune to smallpox when exposed to the virus. Thus, in 1798, Jenner developed the first smallpox vaccine. In 1885, famous scientist Louis Pasteur, who is also known for developing the method of pasteurization, developed the rabies vaccine. The next boom in vaccine discovery was throughout the early 20th century when protection against diphtheria, tetanus, anthrax, cholera, plague, typhoid, and tuberculosis, to name a few, were created, with the revolutionary breakthrough of a polio vaccine in 1955 by Jonas Salk. By the 1940s, vaccines were frequently recommended. However, vaccines did not have an official recommended schedule until as late as 1995. And today, still, the state does not require mandatory vaccinations, although there are vaccination requirements for schools at the discretion of the state. Although vaccines are not necessarily compulsory, as there are exemptions for medical, religious, or personal beliefs, vaccines have proven their power and their indispensability throughout history. On May 8, 1980, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention declared the biggest achievement in international public health had been achieved: the total eradication of smallpox. Before this eradication, smallpox was a horrifically deadly disease, killing 3 out of every 10 people who contracted it. Those lucky enough to survive were ravaged by scars. Although North America was eliminated of smallpox in 1952, and Europe a year later, much of the world was still devastated by smallpox. Therefore, in 1959, the World Health Organization enacted a plan of great magnitude to rid the world of smallpox. Later, the plan was revamped after low funds and commitment ceased its progression into the Intensified Eradication Program in 1967, which was successful due to increased surveillance of cases, development of the bifurcated needle, which is not only faster, more cost-effective, but also punctures the skin so the vaccine is more effective, and mass vaccination campaigns. The initiative used a method called ring vaccination. The way this would work is the surveillance would track down cases in all those who could have possibly been exposed to the smallpox patient. Then, with the bifurcated needle, mass amounts of people could be vaccinated quickly. Finally, in 1975, the cases of smallpox were down to one 3-year-old girl in Bangladesh, and in 1978, the last person to die of smallpox passed away. Currently, there are only 2 locations, the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Vector Institute in Russia, where the variola virus, or smallpox virus, is stored for research purposes, such as learning more about infectious diseases and trying to find a method of treatment for other pox diseases. With the success of the smallpox eradication, health organizations around the world, including the CDC, the World Health Organization, and the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, set out to eradicate polio in 1988. Before this initiative, worldwide, 1,000 children a day were paralyzed due to polio. Since then, global polio cases have decreased by 99%, with only 3 countries in which polio is still endemic or still commonly occurring. Factors such as civil unrest, political instability, poor infrastructure, and the nature of polio, in which it is hard to detect its presence until later when the virus has already had a chance to spread, prove to be obstacles when tackling the last 1% of cases. However arduous the process has been thus far, the global health and financial benefits still remain clear and the finish line in sight. While only diseases that strictly infect and are hosted in humans can be eradicated, that does not diminish the massive health benefits vaccines have provided to public global health. Since the Vaccines for Children program was launched in 1994, vaccines have prevented more than 21 million hospitalizations and over 732,000 deaths. Even consider the annual flu vaccine. Not only is it impressive that vaccine developers can predict the variant strain of influenza for the following year, but that it is accurate enough that they have reduced the risk of illness by 40 to 60%. With all of the tangible positive results vaccines have provided to our collective health as a species, it is important to understand where the movement against such public health efforts originate. This will demonstrate the intertanglement of how society shapes views and practice of science and how science influences beliefs and practices of society. The most clear sensational argument against the use of vaccines occurred in 1998 when British doctors Andrew Wakefield and colleagues published a study suggesting that the MMR vaccine, that is measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, may predispose children to autism. Academics noted Wakefield's small sample size, design without controls, and spotty conclusions. However, the social damage done with that small spark of the published study continued without ceasing. Word of mouth was immediate and spread like wildfire, while rates of vaccinations plummeted in both the United States and Britain. Dr. Wakefield did not mention he had actually received funding for his research from the Legal Aid Board from a solicitor taking legal action against the manufacturer of the MMR vaccine, and actually that some of the participants in the study were litigants in that case. Both these facts suggest a desire for negative impacts towards the vaccine. Additionally, Dr. Wakefield had actually filed a patent himself for a new vaccine, showing a clear conflict of interest. Further, in 2011, a report by British journalist Brian Deer obtained the medical records of the study participants and found that 2 of the 12 children had developmental delays prior to the study, although being claimed as typically developing. Also, the study reported that 8 of the 12 children experienced gastrointestinal or autism-typical symptoms after getting the vaccinations, but Deer reported that in truth only 2 children experienced those symptoms during the time of the study. Eventually, the paper was retracted 12 years later by 10 of the 12 authors, Wakefield not included, and Andrew Wakefield was found guilty of dishonesty, breaking ethical protocol by the General Medical Council, and was delicensed. However, this retraction and countless studies proving there actually is no link between the MMR vaccine and autism has not stopped the conviction felt by those who believe in the validity of such claim, even though there are other scientific reasons which explain a rise in the presence of autism. For example, the understanding that autism is on a spectrum is relatively recent. Therefore, only children with severe autism would have been categorized as such. But with a greater breadth of knowledge, those who would not previously have been diagnosed with autism are now being classified so. With the increasing diagnosis of autism, it is slightly understandable why parents would have wanted a scapegoat for their concerns. However, the continued belief in a scientifically proven to be false finding is detrimental not only to public health efforts and education, but also to the herd immunity necessary for maintaining the overall health of a population. This initial scare has spawned an entire movement against vaccinating children, or the anti-vax movement. Media coverage fuels speculation as coverage of situational successes outweighs scientifically founded suggestions. For example, celebrities have endorsed the anti-vaccination movement, which further intensifies a false validity of the platform. even after being delicensed and not having his findings be corroborated by the scientific community. In 2016, Wakefield directed and released his film Vax, which argues that the CDC allegedly manipulated and omitted data to cover up the, quote, actual truth about a link between autism and the MMR vaccine. Wakefield's documentary has been labeled as propaganda for the anti-vaccination movement and shows to what lengths he will go to fight for a cause that has been proven to have no substance. However, the consequences of his insistence on bashing vaccines can be seen in the recent resurgence of measles both after Wakefield's paper was published and the movie released. In 2000, measles was eliminated from the United States. However, with the controversy sparked by Wakefield's paper, there has been a resurgence of the disease with outbreaks worldwide. In 2017 alone, 1 year after the Vax documentary was released, the United States had 2 major outbreaks, with one in Disneyland which left more than 130 infected with measles, and in Minnesota which had 65 confirmed cases where the median age of those ill was 21 months. In Europe, the same year, there were 35 measles-related deaths and a 4-fold increase in the number of cases. And in 2019 so far, there have been 704 confirmed cases of measles in 22 states, which is the greatest number of cases of measles in the United States since 1994 when the Vaccines for Children program was launched. Clark County in Washington state recently claimed a state of public emergency due to the 53 cases of measles, likely due to the fact that 1 in 4 kindergarten students in the county are not vaccinated. New York State saw its largest amount of measles cases in decades, particularly in Brooklyn, where there is a high concentration of Orthodox Jews who do not believe in vaccinating their children and can be exempt due to religious reasons. These continued, large-scale outbreaks of measles can cause truly harmful effects, including pneumonia, swelling of the brain known as encephalitis, and even death. However, part of the societal indifference to the potential magnitude of such health effects is due to how recent the disease was eliminated and the subsequent reappearance. According to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia's director of the Vaccine Education Center, this indifference is because the erasure of measles in 2000 also erases societal understanding of its effects. Wakefield's falsified research findings were for his own financial benefit towards his own vaccine and for the benefit of the lawsuit against the MMR vaccine manufacturers, whose solicitor also funded Wakefield's study. To achieve the goal, he tampered with science through research fraud and unethical treatment towards children. These fraudulent results led to generations of an unfounded aversion towards vaccines, such that unnecessary outbreaks have occurred and a culture of distrust in public health has ensued. Immunization rates in the UK reflect this mistrust as it has taken 20 years since the publishing of the paper for the rates to recover and return to its pre-release date. While I can't give a certain reason why citizens choose not to be vaccinated or vaccinate their children, I will try to speculate. First of all, a study done during the International Conference on Computing, Networking, and Communications suggested strong evidence towards negative news spreading faster than good news. This would explain why Wakefield's paper had a significantly greater impact than the countless refutes against his arguments following the retraction. Also, there's great variability in advice in child rearing. Thus, it seems that it is hard to understand exactly what the, quote, best way to raise a child is. So once a parent finds a cause to hang their hat on, they raise all their children that way and spread it to their community members, which is why it is that unvaccinated groups of people occur in communities. Finally, in recent years, there has been an argument that all things natural are better: organic food, natural medication, and so forth. Therefore, the argument against vaccinations fits this anti-GMO, anti-science cause. Through the span of this discourse, there has been a loss of trust in the public health system. A study published in the British Medical Journal cites that 30% of respondents reported that they had little or very little trust in healthcare. The way a society views science and medicine has a direct impact on the health of a population. This is clear in the lives lost and rise in illness rates due to misrepresentation of scientific data, which is compounded by the media coverage and simplification of findings when communicating to the general public. There is no separating medical knowledge and daily lives of citizens. While I can only present one such example, I believe it is an irrefutable representation of the potential negative effects that scientists have when they abuse the trust that we, collectively as a society, place on the objective pursuit of science.